Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and completely reframe how we look at achieving our long-term goals. For years, we've all been told that to get things done, we just need to find our motivation. But today, we're going to shift our focus entirely away from those fleeting emotions. Instead, we're going to look under the hood at your actual biological architecture. We're exploring the distinct neural frameworks of both motivation and discipline, and we're going to show you exactly how to build a brain that hits its goals consistently.
So let me ask you a question, and I really want you to think about this for a second. Why is it so incredibly easy to feel motivated at midnight? When you're lying in bed mapping out a massive new workout plan or this brilliant business idea, but it's nearly impossible to actually take action the very next morning. I mean, we have all been there, right? You feel this intense spark of drive, but by 7 a.m., poof, it's completely vanished. Why exactly does that happen?
Well, that brings us to Section 1, the motivation trap. Why relying on willpower is a biological mistake.
So here is the core conflict. Motivation? It's simply a spark. It's a transient, emotion-driven initiator. Basically, it's heavily dependent on your subjective reward states and your immediate brain chemistry in that exact second. It gets you super excited, but it just doesn't last. Now, contrast that with discipline. Discipline is an engine. It operates as a structured cognitive framework that ensures consistent action completely in the absence of emotional momentum. You don't need to feel good to be disciplined, You just need the right cognitive structures in place.
Which leads us to Section 2, your brain on discipline, the executive control center.
The actual physical hardware of your self-discipline lives right behind your forehead in the prefrontal cortex. It coordinates with the anterior cingulate cortex to literally override your immediate impulses. And what's wild is that cognitive psychologists actually measure this efficiency in the lab. For instance, in the Stroop task, you might see the word red written out, but it's printed in blue ink. So you have to fight your automatic impulse to just read the word. Or in the go-no-go task, you're rapidly pressing a key for some prompts but actively stopping yourself for others. Getting a high score on these specific tasks proves something really important. Self-control isn't just some abstract personality trait, it's a measurable physical function of your brain.
All right, Section 3, decoding the dopamine drive, the engine of action initiation. Now, within the mesolimbic pathway, dopamine actually operates in two totally distinct firing patterns. First up, we have phasic dopamine signaling. These are rapid, sub-second bursts. Think of this as that sudden chemical spike triggered by novelty or a reward cue. This is the literal rush that gets you off the couch to initiate an action. It's fast, it's super dynamic, and it is all about immediate incentive.
But then, contrast that with tonic dopamine signaling. This is completely different. Tonic signaling is a low-frequency pacemaker firing. It essentially maintains a steady background concentration of dopamine in your brain. So it doesn't give you a sudden rush. Instead, it modulates the baseline effort you're willing to invest in a task overall. Simply put, if basic dopamine is slamming on the gas pedal, tonic dopamine is the engine's idling speed.
And to actually capture these two distinct neurochemical signals, researchers have to use entirely different spatial and temporal scales. To monitor those slow, steady background levels of tonic dopamine, they use a technique called microdialysis over several minutes. But to catch those rapid, sub-second phasic bursts, they rely on fast-scan cyclic voltammetry, which captures microscopic chemical changes in just 100 milliseconds. It's pretty amazing. Ultimately, balancing both of these signals is exactly what allows you to turn a single action into a long-term routine.
Moving on to Section 4, automating your habits, transferring control to the basal ganglia.
Okay, get ready for a genuinely surprising fact. Roughly 45% of your daily behaviors bypass your prefrontal oversight entirely. Literally, almost half of what you do is completely automated. Your brain actually shifts control away from that energy-hungry prefrontal cortex and hands it straight over to the automated neural pathways within the basal ganglia. Honestly, this is just how the brain optimizes its energy. So, the million-dollar question, how do we manually hack this process to build discipline? Well, we do it by using what psychologists call implementation intentions. The formula is beautifully simple. If situation X arises, then I will perform response Y. By establishing this deliberate mental association between a specific environmental cue and a planned behavior, you create a strategic automaticity. You are directly transferring behavioral control over to your contextual cues.
But, and this is a pretty big but here, there is a trade-off.
While using these if-then plans massively accelerates action execution and creates almost instant habits with barely any cognitive effort, outcome reevaluation experiments show us a real downside. It causes behavioral inflexibility. Because you are so rigidly following an if-then rule, your brain actually pays way less attention to the final outcome. So if your end goal suddenly changes, you might find yourself stubbornly stuck in an automated behavior that just doesn't serve you anymore, simply because you trained the cue, not the objective.
So the absolutely crucial point here is making sure your behaviors actually align with your core self. Psychologists map how a habit is formed along a specific continuum. It starts way over at external regulation, doing something just for a reward. Then it moves to introjected regulation, doing it just to avoid feeling guilty. Next is identified regulation, where you actually consciously value the task. And finally, integrated regulation, where the habit is fully woven into your identity. By moving your daily tasks along this continuum, you literally transformed forced, exhausting actions into integrated, completely friction-free discipline.
Let's look at Section 5, the science of fatigue, why we lose self-control.
You see, behavioral science basically has two distinct models for why we fail. The classic view is the strength model of ego depletion. This suggests willpower is literally a limited mental energy pool that gets drained by stress, bad sleep, hunger, or making too many decisions. Like a muscle, it just gets tired. But the newer, competing view is called the process model. This model suggests regulatory failure isn't physical depletion at all, but rather a motivated shift in attention. Your brain is essentially reprioritizing your focus away from boring have-to tasks and toward rewarding want-to tasks.
And all of this is governed by your brain's salience network. I really want to emphasize this for everyone watching right now. When you are a few hours into a brutally difficult task and you suddenly lose motivation, it is not because you are inherently lazy. Prolonged engagement actually reduces the salience network's capacity to sustain an effort signal. When that happens, your brain starts recalculating the cost of your effort. So that mental fatigue you feel, it is literally an emotional signal that the opportunity cost of continuing is just too high, which prompts you to go seek out immediate gratification instead.
All right, let's get practical. Section 6, your discipline training plan, volitional conditioning exercises.
Think of this as a literal workout plan for your brain's inhibitory pathways. First, you can use micro-commitments, like making your bed for 21 days straight to reinforce early habit pathways. You can practice delayed gratification by waiting just 10 minutes before checking your phone to train impulse inhibition. Use attention anchoring, like a simple 1-minute body scan to calm those high-activation emotional responses. You can even try routine reversal, literally brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand to enhance neural flexibility. Or try temptation exposure, stare right at your social media app, but don't open it, just observe the craving. Add in some short cold exposure for mental resilience, and keep it willpower diary to log your daily self-control efforts. By doing these, you are actively building structural discipline in your brain.
And that brings us to the conclusion, the engine over the spark.
As the research shows, relying primarily on motivation is an unstable strategy for long-term goal achievement. Sustainable self-regulation is achieved by building discipline. Motivation is just a mesolimbic dopamine spike. It's wildly sensitive to stress, bad sleep, and 100 other variables. It is fundamentally unreliable. Discipline, however, is a physical structure. It's something you actively build by shifting cognitive load from your prefrontal cortex down into the automated, reliable structures of the basal ganglia. Which leaves us with this one final thought. When your alarm goes off tomorrow morning, are you going to rely on a fleeting emotional spark, just hoping you feel motivated? Or are you going to begin building your cognitive engine, training your neural pathways to guarantee consistent action, absolutely no matter how you feel? The biology is in your hands. Thank you so much for watching this explainer, and I'll see you next time.